Well, thank you, Brett, and what a great group of folks we have tonight. Thank you so much for being here. Really excited to have you here this afternoon. For the folks on teleprompter, I'll get right back on in just a second, okay? So, all right, thanks to each of you who've joined us. I'd like to extend a special thank you to Harry Smith and Andrew Joyce, and to WSU's 12th president, Elizabeth Cantwell, who's joined us here on her first day on campus. How exciting is that? I'd also like to welcome WSU's academic and administrative leaders, and some of our Board of Regents members are here today. Would our Board of Regents members stand up so we can recognize you, please? I know some of you are here. There we go. Enrique. All right. Awesome. Thank you so much. I'd also like to offer a special welcome to members of the Murrow News Fellows Program. These are working journalists in newsrooms across Washington, and they've joined us here this afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. All right, the Murrow Symposium is a momentous occasion. I'm grateful to all who contribute to Murrow College making this event possible. Their generosity allows us to execute the symposium at a high level and to keep this event free for our students and community members. I'd like to extend a special thank you to Capstone Financial, KHQ Spokane, the Washington State Association of Broadcasters, and Gray Television for their financial support. With their help, the students we serve are better prepared to launch their careers, to become leaders in their workplaces and other organizations, and to better serve the needs of society. There are many people to thank for making this event possible. I'm especially grateful to members of Murrow College faculty and staff, and to our partners at Northwest Public Broadcasting, and I should also recognize Sarah Mahaffey and her team from the Provost's office. They've been stupendous. Thank you, everyone. All right. Journalism plays a critical role in the health of free societies by monitoring and tempering the influence of those in authority. By observing those in government, business, and other organizations, and by holding them accountable for their actions and outcomes, journalists contribute to the flow of factual, accurate information those living in free societies require. In April 1945, Edward R. Murrow arrived at Buchenwald, one of the most notorious concentration camps in Germany. But no one, Murrow included, was prepared for the horrors that awaited him that day. For 3 days, Murrow wrestled with what he had seen. Then he recorded one of the most profound broadcasts in American history. I pray you to believe what I have said about Buchenwald, Murrow told listeners on April 15th. I have reported what I saw and heard, but only part of it. For most of it, I have no words. We're approaching the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Buchenwald, when Murrow and others exposed the horrors of the Holocaust to millions of people around the world. Last month, Murrow College sent students to Buchenwald to learn about and report on Murrow's coverage of the atrocities of the Holocaust. When Murrow said those words on CBS radio, the public believed him. But today, our students and professional communicators face an information world that has shifted dramatically, where truth is under siege, journalists face threats, and government leaders seek to shape narratives not in a declaration of the truth, but to meet their own needs. Journalism is a cornerstone of democratic self-government, serving to inform public opinion in an imperfect but critical articulation of the truth. Without it, the very foundation of our democracy is under threat. We begin this afternoon's award presentation with WSU Provost Dr. Chris Riley-Tillman. Dr. Riley-Tillman's career has been marked by a steadfast commitment to higher education, research, and the advancement of evidence-based practices in schools. He co-developed a widely recognized approach to assessing student behavior, and his expertise has informed applied educational settings nationwide. As WSU's provost, he's leading the university's effort to shape academic policy and assess institutional progress. Dr. Riley Tillman. Welcome, my friend.
My background also does not have my ability to read a teleprompter, so this will be an interesting foyer. Ethics, courage, and professional excellence, the ideals embodied by Edward R. Murrow, make a difference for each of us as individuals, as informed members of our society and world. Unfortunately, as Bruce mentioned, these are perilous days for journalists and perilous days for the truth. The Committee to Protect Journalists reports that worldwide 103 reporters and media workers died while working in 2024, the largest number on record. I just have to say, when I read this earlier today, I was shocked at that number, and I just want to sit for a second and think about the impacts of this is literally as bad as it has ever been in this particular space, and that's a stunning thought in 2025. I certainly didn't think we would ever be in this place. Edward R. Murrow built his legacy on innovation and professional excellence, but we still reference his work today because of his courageous dedication to tell the truth. In seeking to tell the truth and fear no man, as he put it, Murrow established an ethical imperative for each of us. It's a point of pride that Murrow College continues the legacy of the most impactful reporter in the history of journalism. The mission of the Murrow College of Communication is to teach and inspire students in keeping with ethics, courage, and professional excellence of Edward R. Murrow. We do that today by honoring Harry Smith with a Lifetime Achievement Award for excellence in journalism. Today, we also welcome WSU's 12th president, here on her first day, Dr. Elizabeth Cantwell. It's pretty good when this is the kickoff for your first day, isn't it? This isn't, arranged just for you. President Cantwell has served as president of Utah State University and has held senior leadership roles in research and innovation at the University of Arizona and Arizona State University. Before her career in higher education, she spent years in service to U.S. national security, holding leadership positions at Lawrence Livermore, Oak Ridge, and Los Alamos National Laboratories. Her work in energy, defense, and space exploration has advanced critical missions vital to the nation's strategic missions. Please join me in welcoming President Cantwell.
Hi there. Thank you for letting me horn in on what is an amazing attribute of Washington State University on my first day, and your enormous grace, because there's a lot I don't know. But I am heavily motivated, so the teleprompter guys, your grace in my moments of going off script. Because this is not just a moment for journalists and journalism, it is a moment for universities and for university presidents. And there are a lot of things that are similar and a lot of things that are different, but what we are honoring today is in the moment when we talk about how free societies require truthful information to function effectively as a democracy, we are talking about truth that is frequently very challenging to discern as an individual and requires that you, as an individual, understand what is moral and ethical for yourself, and you bring that to the work that you do. So the dependence of the work of journalism professionals, professional communicators who seek and report the truth is not only more important now than it has been in many generations in this country, but it is a function of things that we have imposed on journalists that have not been imposed on journalists before, which is not only is truth obvious, I just need to create a narrative about it that others will be able to hear and able to understand, but what is obvious to me as an individual about what is ethical, what is honest, what is morally correct, and how do I bring that, in addition to the facts that I can see, to the narrative. So for decades, the Murrow College faculty have recognized and honored the achievements of journalists and professional communicators at this symposium with an eye towards factual, well-crafted narratives and information. The award recipients have demonstrated a commitment to ethical standards, to courage, and now we are really talking about moral courage as much as any kind of courage, and professional excellence exemplified by Edward R. Murrow as he reported from Buchenwald during World War II, challenged by the abuses of power that Senator Joseph McCarthy exhibited and documented the plights of migrant farm workers in the Harvest of Shame. This afternoon, we honor a journalist who personifies Murrow's ethical courage, and again, I will just say now more than ever, and commitment to seeking and telling the truth by presenting Harry Smith with the 2025 Murrow Lifetime Achievement Award for Excellence in Journalism. Mr. Smith has many external awards associated with the work that he's done, multiple Emmy Awards as an esteemed journalist, acclaimed storyteller during his more than 40-year career. But he has clearly brought, whether he's reporting from war zones, interviewing world leaders, capturing the spirit of everyday people, he has brought to his storytelling a core of ethics and morality that is so, so important today to help everybody who hears and sees and views the work that he does to understand and explain the human experience. His long-standing practice of crafting stories of compassion and empathy and humility resonate with and connect with people all over the globe, not just in our location or in our country. More recently, he's continued his legacy delivering insightful, compelling narratives that increase our capacity to discern and help everybody bring the world and the rather chaotic moment that we are in into focus. So from the airwaves of Denver, Colorado, to Tahrir Square in Cairo, Egypt, to the war-torn streets of Sarajevo, Harry Smith has reported across the country and around the globe in a way that makes his capacity uniquely important right now. His work has taken him from presidential interviews to the front lines of major historical events, always with an unwavering commitment to truthful storytelling. So wherever he traveled, Harry Smith found stories that surprised us. They are everywhere, touched us, and ultimately connected us as our country grapples today with political and social divisiveness. And I think that's a small word for a very large set of things that we are experiencing. His journalism has served as a reminder of the values and experiences that unite us, that bring us together as a nation. He reminds us that journalism, the kind of journalism pioneered and practiced by Edward R. Murrow, requires curiosity, it requires empathy, and it requires courage. His dedication to ethics and truthful storytelling not only inspire confidence and trust in us, but give us a pathway, a roadmap for where we need to go. How appropriate that we recognize Harry Smith during this year's symposium when the theme is Connect Discovery Through Curiosity. Please join me in watching this tribute.
Still to this day, when I watch a Harry Smith story, I think I'm better off for it because he's so good at what he does.
He makes us think and he makes us feel. And I think that in the world of journalism, if someone can do that, in that world, that's heroic. And I think that's who Harry is.
He has the ability, just with his words, to take us to places that we never imagined going, introduce us to people that might seem ordinary, but through Harry's eyes become extraordinary.
What can you say about Harry Smith that Harry couldn't write a lot better than you could ever say it? His way with words, his curiosity, his goodness, the humanity that he brings to every single story.
Harry's whole thing is you have to leave the building. One of my favorite Harry expressions is, any day outside of the building is a win for the good guys. So one time, my wife sends me a story about how the governor's wife, the First Lady of Maine, is now waiting tables at a local restaurant in Boothbay Harbor to make some extra cash over the summer. Harry's walking through the newsroom. I was like, Harry, take a look at this. Let's go.
And what can I get for you, sir?
What are you going to do with all the money you make?
I want to buy a car.
And I don't know, I think it was 2 days later, we're up in Maine with Harry shooting an interview with the First Lady of Maine.
Without question, Harry's career has been driven by curiosity. When he heads out for a story, he is giddy.
One story that comes to mind is a story we did on the Hope Diamond. We're sort of like working our way through 6 layers of security at the Smithsonian, and he's just kind of like buzzing. And I'm like, what's going on? And he's like, I was up late reading about the diamond. Do you know there's boron in the diamond? When the diamond gets shot with a laser, the boron gets excited and it does this little dance. You know, like we're like waiting at security, he's doing like a little dance, and he's like, and the diamond glows. And he's just so excited.
I think the most memorable moment for me was when he created this beautiful essay at the beginning of the pandemic.
In order to come together to fight against a spreading virus, we are being asked and encouraged to do the opposite, to pull apart for a while.
I truly believe that the work that he did during the pandemic was memorable. It was important. When people were panicking and when people were so scared, Harry was a voice of reason and of calm. And I can't tell you the number of times we get stopped in airports and people say, they grab him by the arm and they say, you got me through the pandemic. That's what Harry always knows, is the power of his words.
Harry Smith's writing is food for the soul. And it allows you to step back and think about something in a different way.
His voice and his pace and his tone always reflected the story in a special way that's often difficult to accomplish.
What Harry will find is that one thread, that one needle in a haystack that brings the whole story into perspective through a snapshot.
Here on the top of this debris pile, a family album. School pictures, a father and son, brothers together, schoolmates. And you wonder, whoever this belonged to, whether or not they're still alive.
He was off in Tahrir Square during the Arab Spring, going back some years. There's all this geopolitical challenges that were being faced at the time and questions about what this meant. But Harry's interest got boiled down to a specific family and how they were experiencing being in Tahrir Square, what it meant to them.
It means a new era, and I hope my daughter and the daughter of everybody in Egypt will live in light and freedom.
That's where I learned to understand Harry's perspective, that he always wants to focus on the people who are present to a situation.
Harry made you feel the story. He didn't just tell a story, he made you feel a story. And I think as a journalist, his empathy was something that it really sets him apart.
Part of his performance is an invitation to members of the audience to crawl under the piano and experience its power. The sound, the vibrations, the unavoidable beauty of the music brought this reporter to tears.
Wow, I didn't see that coming.
He's a magical person because he doesn't ever lose his heart. And he just reminds us all why what we do is so special.
Harry, I just want to say congratulations on this tremendous honor. As others have said, you certainly deserve it.
Congratulations, Harry.
Just an amazing body of work, and the people you've touched and other journalists you've touched and the camera folks you've touched too.
Harry, congratulations on this well-deserved honor. You are not just a mentor and a friend, but just a privilege and a pleasure to be around constantly.
We all revere you. We all look up to you. We all aspire to be a little bit more like you.
You were the best I've ever worked with. Was thrilled to work with you as a colleague. I'm proud to call you a friend.
The lessons that you've taught us, at least me, are going to be with me forever, and I thank you for that.
Harry, you have been the MVP in my life for almost 40 years, and I can't think of anyone in the world who deserves this recognition more than you. I'm so proud of you and proud to be your wife, your partner, and your best friend.
So now we actually prefer the award itself. In recognition of his decades of insightful reporting, which has made him one of the world's most influential journalists, we are honored to present Harry Smith with the 2025 Edward R. Murrow College of Communication Lifetime Achievement Award for Excellence in Journalism. I am so proud of myself. I think I could be a journalist.
It's a little like being at your own funeral. Dude, wow. That was something. Didn't see it coming. When I am typically sitting where you all are sitting, I expect one of three things. Expect to be entertained, expect to learn something, or be expected to be assured of my salvation. And unfortunately, I can't guarantee any of those three today. Thank you, Dean Pinkleton. When I got the call to say that this award was coming my way, I was completely flabbergasted. Thank you to the Cougar community for welcoming Andrea and I. In the last 24 hours, we have had the best time ever. Quite honestly, coming over the Palouse, I know the name now. We came down yesterday and we're driving over this amazing topography. Andrea kept saying, the topography, the topography. So we've got a lot to learn about this amazing place. I'm not sure we should be public about it because it's so cool. You don't want a lot of people coming in here screwing it all up. So, yeah, wow, thank you. And Dr. Cantwell, Betsy, thank you for that introduction. Much appreciated. Really, especially if I've had a degree of success or if I've succeeded in my job after all these years, I really need to thank Andrea Joyce, who's in the Sports Broadcasting Hall of Fame, by the way, just in case you were curious. She She walked into a Dallas Cowboys locker room in 1987 and has been breaking and busting glass ceilings ever since, and is still covering sports and is getting ready to cover her 18th Olympic Games next winter in Milan. So she's still at it, and she's a rock. A quick story about how we got married against her better judgment. So it's the night before our wedding in 1986. We're getting married on Flag Day, and I get a phone call. There's no cell phones there. None of the technology we take for granted now existed. And the phone rings, and I grab it, and her parents are already in the car getting ready to go to the night before the wedding party. And it's a producer I worked with for years named Wayne Nelson, and I'm, yep. Oh, God, that's great. I get off the phone, and Andrea says, who was that? And I said, it was Wayne. She says, what's going on? And she said, and I said, well, we're going to go to Pakistan. We got the green light to go to Pakistan. And, well, it wasn't really Pakistan. It was the no man's land between Pakistan and Afghanistan, which has been described as the most dangerous place in the world. And she said, no. She said, when are you going? I said, well, in a week or so. And she said, nah, no marriage. I am not marrying you. No way, no how. This, like, I didn't sign up for whatever you think you're up to. I've not signed up for this. And I said, you know what? Joyce, her mom, is in the car. We don't want to keep Joyce waiting. We need to get to this party. And I said, we'll work it out. And we've been trying to work it out for almost 40 years now. I spent a lot of time over the last couple of months reading about and watching Ed Murrow. And he could come off as something of a scold. He was a Quaker. Well, I was born and raised a sour Calvinist, and scolding is in our DNA. And I'm going to try to keep this as scold-free as possible, but we'll see how that works out. There are myriad ways you respond when you are informed you're the recipient of the Edward R. Murrow Lifetime Achievement Award. And the first is a kind of affirmation. I just thought I was on some kind of a secret mission. I always thought I was just trying to tell stories about people and places and history, stories that I hoped would connect us. I am an e pluribus unum guy. Who's taken Latin, or who knows what it means? Come on. Out of many one, which was America's unofficial motto for the longest time. It didn't become In God We Trust until the Red Scare of the 1950s, because the communists were atheists, and people in the United States insisted it become In God We Trust. But back in the day, back in those early amazing days, when our country was in its infancy, people believed that out of many one. So I'm an e pluribus unum guy, and I absolutely believe that there is more that connects us than separates us. I absolutely believe there's more that connects us than separates us. Stories like the grade school teacher who noticed one of her normally robust 8-year-olds running out of energy during a recess after a day or two. She tells the school nurse notices the same thing, calls the parents. Next thing you know, this little kid is in a helicopter going to Pittsburgh for cancer treatment. So here's this grade school teacher in a no-name school in the middle of nowhere in Ohio. She basically saves this kid's life. He gets treatment, is in recovery, but he can't come to school for danger of the germs that are spread there. So he's being taught virtually in her classroom. And she realizes that this kid is not getting it. And every day after school, she would get in her car and put on Sirius XM and listen to hard rock blaring as loud as possible to drive the 20 minutes to this kid's house and teach him individually every single day. She never saw herself as heroic or doing something special. And those are the people who are neighbors. Those are the people we don't pay enough attention to. We did a series of stories about the Apollo moon missions, and one of them was about the women who sewed the spacesuits. Women in Maryland sewed the spacesuits for the Apollo missions. One bad stitch and you're dead. Amazing. They were wonderful. They were so terrific. We met a guy named Rick Ryan, a Vietnam veteran who lives in Murphy's, California. And he had demons, and he realized that if he walked a lot, that would help settle him down a little bit. And he turned to his wife one day and he said, tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to start waving at people, and every time somebody waves back, I'm going to put a quarter in a jar, and we're going to give that money to an organization out of UCLA called Operation Mend. It's an amazing organization that heals veterans with wounds seen and unseen that people in the VA just can't seem to deal with. Well, quarters turned into dollars, dollars turned into thousands of dollars, and now people just send him checks, and this guy has raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for this Operation Mend just by waving at people every day, right? Those people are our neighbors. Our country is full of them, people we admire, people we wish we were a little more like. My second reaction to receiving this honor is, surely there must be some mistake. I woke up in a nightmare the other night, and it was like I was in this black and white movie, and I said, you got the wrong guy. I don't know. Yeah, you got the wrong guy. The third realization is there's a transaction. So if you come to do this, you have to sing for your supper and you have to do a speech. Gene Siskel, the great old movie critic who was on with Roger Ebert for years, for some of you old timers know who it is, you kids will have to Google it. He was a really good friend of mine, and whenever I saw him, he says, what do you know for sure? And it's a great conversation starter, but it's a horrible thing to have to think about when grappling with your own history, let alone thinking about the exact moment we're in broadcast journalism. It's a big task. First, just a little bit, well, actually more than a little bit, about how I became a reporter. This is for you students. In the interest of full disclosure, I was a terrible student in high school. I never, ever did homework. I was a slacker before the word slacker came to common usage. I did have a set of encyclopedias in my room. One of my older brothers sold encyclopedias, so I had a set of encyclopedias in my room. And I had a Montgomery Ward AM/FM radio, and I'd turn it on as low as possible, usually listening to the jazz station, and just page through the encyclopedia every night instead of doing my homework. I don't recommend that for any of you with children as a way to help them get through, but a couple of important things happened. My junior year, you're supposed to write your big essay with the footnotes and everything else. Everybody in my class had a theme. I didn't have an idea. I go to John Galassa. He taught English. His brother taught Latin at our high school south of Chicago, and they both lived in Old Town, which is where the hippies lived in Chicago. And they came down to our town every day. And I said, I've got nothing. He says, well, no, you got nothing. He opens a drawer and he hands me a book. And it was Jack Kerouac, On the Road. And I was like this giant stack of kindling that he lit a match to. I devoured that book that leads to Allen Ginsberg, that leads to Lawrence Ferlinghetti, that leads to Leroy Jones, and on and on and on. I mean, the fire was lit. It was crazy. And it was almost early enough to save me from starting college in academic probation. Not quite, but that's how I started. The other thing that happened when I was in high school, my senior year, is the coach of the speech team came to me and said, I want you to try this event that we have in speech. It's called radio speaking. And he says, this is how it works. You get a pile of wire copy, You get a couple of pages from a magazine of some advertisements. You get about 45 minutes. You have to turn it into a newscast that's either 4 minutes and 45 seconds to 5 minutes, never over, never under, else you get penalized. And I realized that I was working harder at speech practice than I was at varsity basketball practice. I quit the varsity basketball team to join the speech team. My friends knew I was crazy. My best friend said, "You'll be a quitter all your life." We're still very, very good friends. That was kind of, fires got lit. I didn't know like I could be or I could turn into a newspaper reporter or a journalist of any kind. But my father, neither my father or mother made it past junior high school, but my father, who drove a truck and was a part-time cop, read 2 newspapers every afternoon. Every afternoon at 5 o'clock, he would come in the door and sit down and read 2 newspapers. My mother would have to back time dinner in order to meet the journalism students, the broadcast, that we understand back time. We couldn't eat until my father had consumed his news. And the CBS News is on a screen over here. And he's got these 2 newspapers, and until he's done, and it's interesting because he and I never had a great relationship, but it wasn't until years and years later people said, "Well, how'd you end up being a reporter?" I said, "I guess I was trying to please my father," and still trying to please my father after all these years. The other thing that was an enormous influence was I had a mother who could identify any plant, any tree, knew the names of everything, and was almost like violently generous. I mean, just was incredibly generous. We had a birthday party for her when she turned 85, and one of my older brothers got up and told a story because I'm the youngest of 8. I was born in 1951. My older siblings were children during the Depression. And he told this story that some of us had never heard before, on how on grocery shopping day, my mother would beg my father for extra pennies. And my father would say, "What are you going to do with the extra pennies?" She said, "Well, if I have extra pennies, I can buy more flour. And if I have more flour, I can bake more loaves of bread. Because men come to our door, to our humble, crappy little house begging for food. And if I can, I want to be able to give them a loaf of bread." So those 2 people have a lot to do with why I'm standing up here. I never had the chance. My father ended up with Alzheimer's disease, and I never had a chance to sort of reconcile with my father, and he always said, "You need to learn a trade." He never understood the trade that I went into, or never got a chance to see me be successful. So in some way, I guess I'm trying to reconcile with him right now on some crazy level. I worked in a lot of different radio jobs. I didn't love radio. I loved radio, but I didn't love playing records for a living, so I did a lot of interviews with people. I'd interview the dog catcher, I'd interview the zoning board guy, anything to do, but just, I was not a good, radio back then was about being a disc jockey, and I was never a great disc jockey, but I love talking to people. And I parlayed that into a job in public television, and from public television, I got a job in local news at the CBS affiliate in Denver, and I was given a 2-week probation, and they ended up keeping me. It was kind of cool. And one of the things, if you're going out into the workforce, and especially if you're looking for a job in an affiliate station, go to the worst one. Mine was in 3rd place, and they were hungry for ideas, and I had a lot of ideas. And one day I came to them and said, "Do you think anybody really understands what happens on Groundhog Day? The shadow, no shadow, that whole deal?" So I went to a costume shop, and I got dressed up as a groundhog, and I rode the shuttle bus in downtown Denver asking people, what's the deal with the shadow, no shadow? And it was great TV. It was really great TV. But I was kind of that guy at the TV station for a while. I was not really a reporter until a once-a-century blizzard. Everything is shut down. I get a phone call. There's a live truck at Denver Stapleton Airport is what it was called back in the day. I live close to the airport. And I went there and I reported my butt off for about 3 days. And all of a sudden, those people who doubted me in the newsroom said, maybe he's worth keeping around. And so I ended up a real reporter, and I rode with cops, and I got to know the doctors and nurses at the hospital because we were a local news station, and if it bleeds, it leads. One day it's a story at the state Supreme Court. A few days later, in a cul-de-sac where a man has murdered his wife and 3 children. And as I grew as a reporter, there was never a day that I didn't just thank my lucky stars and be amazed that I was allowed to do this. One day I was suggested that I do a series of stories called Trading Places and like go out and do somebody's job. And I think the premise was it was supposed to be funny. And I said, no, I think there's a better way to do this. And one of the very first stories we did was about a guy named Leo Santavania, who was a fry cook in a diner just off of downtown Denver. And we met him at 3:30 in the morning in the diner because he had to bake pies from scratch before the morning rush. So we helped him make some pies. And about 6 o'clock, the door opens, and there's this rush of people, hundreds of people coming in to get breakfast. He's the only guy. And it was just an amazing flurry of activity and frying pans and toast and just bedlam in there. But it was beautiful to watch Leo work. Leo spoke about 100 words of English, and I spoke even less Spanish, un poco. Okay, poquito. But somehow this all worked. And we got the material back to the station, and I said, we've got to figure out a way to really celebrate this guy's life. We found Organ Concerto by Haydn and the Allegro movement of this beautiful organ. And the eggs are flying in the air, and the toast is flying. And Leo Santavania was the maestro. He was the hero of the story. And once you figure out that somebody might let you do that, you're going to do it again and again and again and again. I have to put one other piece of information out about my father. So as the youngest of 8 and as a sour Calvinist and a dour Dutchman, he was not a guy that you could negotiate with. And when I was 13, he says, well, do you know what you're going to do tomorrow? I said, no. He says, well, you're going to go to work at Herman Zeldenrust's farm on the outskirts of town. And I really hated it. I hated every single minute of it. And I really wanted to say, Dad, I don't think this whole farm thing is for me. But those are words that were never going to come out of my mouth and expect to be alive the next day. But there was a great thing about that, about sort of embracing the difficulty of that situation and embracing the work. That work in and of itself has its own value. You know, I grew to be proud of my calluses and the things that I could get to do. And while I rode my bicycle out there, I'm 15 years old, and sometimes the farmer would say, throw your bicycle in the back of the pickup truck. Take it on home, because I need you to shut down the irrigation pipes at 2 in the morning. And I'm like, I'm a man. So thank you, Dad, for that. The other great thing about that work on the farm is at the end of August, when two-a-day football practices starts, I was allowed to leave the farm and go to two-a-day football practices, and everybody else was gassed. This was like vacation for me. I I was heavily churched as a child, and that helped too. We went twice on Sunday, went back on Wednesday night, did not play outside on Sunday, and I will say I have discarded a lot of it, but some of it rubbed off. The part of loving your neighbor, welcoming the stranger, the Beatitudes, the good stuff. And when I look back at my life, I kind of feel like I won the lottery. Between my father and my mother and this crazy family of 8 children, my older siblings insist that when I was little, I would stand on a chair during the dinner hour and demand to be heard. We did make it to Pakistan, by the way, which is a great story in itself, because there were these people that the U.S. was supplying with tow missiles and all kinds of armament called the Mujahideen, and some of those guys came back to America for medical treatment, and we met them and the doctors who were taking them and care of them in Texas, and this doctor says, "We're going back," and we said, "Well, we want to go with you." And so we had this whole idea that these Mujahideen were going to, go back and rejoin the fight against the horrible Soviet invading forces in Afghanistan. And we got to JFK Airport, and the Mujahideen guys were trying to flush their tickets down the toilet. That's a laugh line. I mean, this was really happening. I mean, my God, these guys were like, okay, we don't want to go back there. We learned a lot over there. So from local news, we get a job at CBS. It was an amazing 2 years, and 2 years were not even up yet when the Moscow bureau job opened up. And I said, how great would this be, right? Let's go there. Let's go to Moscow. Now, I had taken a Russian in high school. I know that goes against the whole slacker narrative, but I had taken Russian in high school. I'm thinking this would be so great. And Andrew and I did a conference call with Wyatt Andrews, who was vacating the post there. And he said, okay, so your apartment's going to be bugged. You're going to be followed everywhere. You're going to be spied on. And there's no groceries. You have to order groceries from Norway. And I'm saying, this sounds so great. And a day or two after that, we got a call from New York, and they said, we want you to come and be the anchor on the morning news, the 107th iteration of the morning news show maybe it was the 150th. I mean, there have been so many versions of the morning news on CBS, we've lost count. And I didn't want to go. I wanted to go to Moscow. I did not want to be an anchorman, did not want that job in any way, shape, or form. And Andrew and I talked about it a lot, and she said, I don't think that you're in a position to tell CBS to shove its anchor job. So we took it, and I went in, and I was having a last meeting with the executive producer of CBS News, and I said, I'm going to be the anchor of this show, and I'm going to be interviewing presidents and, who knows what, and you need to know that somewhere there is videotape of me dressed up as a groundhog. And he said, I'm good with that. Reporting is just amazing, amazing work. The stuff that we've gotten to do over the years. And one of the times I really fondly remember the most was the summer of 1993. All of the Midwest was underwater. Rainstorm after giant thunderstorm after giant thunderstorm. Water's going over the banks in the Mississippi, the Missouri, everywhere through the Midwest. So we went out there, and I had a live truck and a crew, and we tried to go to a different place every day. We'd get off the air in the morning, call the local sheriffs at the local counties. What do you got going on? What do you got going on? We just moved around. Every day a different place. After a couple of weeks, we're all the way down in southern Illinois where the Mississippi and the Ohio River meet, and we see this woman in her backyard, and she's stacking sandbags. And we walk in there, and she turns, and she just looks at us. She said, I was wondering when you were going to get here. And that was just the most affirming thing. I mean, I don't need an Emmy. I don't need anything. Because this woman just was like, I'm watching you tell this story every day in TV, and I knew you'd get her eventually. It was really powerful stuff. I love reporting so much. And man, do we need reporters now. Real reporters, journalists. Lately has felt more and more to me like we're in a movie. We're very much in the movie Groundhog Day, except without laughs. We've become numb, inured to the slew of presidential directives, executive orders, the daily dirge of Doge news. We're sending people back to Cuba. No, we're bringing them back. We're deporting more people than ever before, but fewer people than the previous president. People get laid off. Some get hired back. We close agencies. Food and medicines don't end up in places where they are desperately needed. We stop funds to this. We stop funds to that, with little regard, it seems, to the consequences. And then sometimes the money comes back. Oops. We hear you can't make an omelet without cracking a few eggs, but what of the human toll on people who have chosen to make their careers in government? Many could have made more money elsewhere, but they took the job with hopes that they could make a difference. So what? I get it. I've witnessed the frustration of people displaced by disasters, being strangled to death by red tape. After Hurricane Katrina, I should have been paying taxes in Louisiana. We spent so much time there in that year afterwards. And after a year, we're in Chalmette, which is in St. Bernard Parish, with 90-some% of the homes in that parish had been inundated by water. And there was a big oil refiner there, and one of those giant white tanks, those giant that you see from the freeway, it imploded and oil went all over this neighborhood. We were the first one. That's a different story. That's more of, we'll talk about that with the journalists, with the young journalists. But the whole idea of everybody's reporting the same thing every day, you've got to go out of the building and find the other stories that are out there. I mean, this Chalmette had been underwater for days. No one had reported about this giant oil thing spilling out all over the place. And we're walking the streets there. I mean, it was hot. The benzene, one of the producers had to get in the car because he was going to pass out because just of the stench. And no one had reported this, but that's you got to leave the building. If you leave the building, every victory is how do I say this? Every day out of the building is a victory for the good guys. So for you reporters, they want to put you on the anchor desk. You can let them put you on the anchor desk, but insist that you go outside. Go outside and see what's really going on. Anyway, we see there we're at this food bank a year after Katrina. And there's a nice middle-aged woman handing out food. And I said, what's your name and where are you from? Oh, it happened to you. Yeah, okay, you're from here. Yeah, we had to move my husband to New Orleans because he's not well. And she starts talking. I said, can we go to your place? And she said, sure. So we go to her house, and she starts explaining how between the red tape of the federal government, between FEMA and the Small Business Administration, the state of Louisiana, and her parish, she was literally being strangled to death by red tape, with tears, just this flood of tears down her face. So are people frustrated with the government? Yeah, I get that. I get that. Listen, I'm on the board of a college. In the last 2 years, the education department could not revise its financial aid form, right? You faculty people know this. One of those Doge kids could have done it in an hour. And wouldn't that have been a better use of their time and our dime? A lot of this is a test. It is our test as citizens and our test as journalists. If the scenes of the Groundhog Day get repeated often enough, perhaps we will all fall asleep. That would be convenient, for as Tom Joad said in The Grapes of Wrath, you're bound to get ideas if you go thinking about stuff. People lie, and we know they're lying, but they keep on lying, and if you repeat the lie often enough, it turns into the truth. Anybody remember who said that first? Who said it? Yeah. The Nazi propaganda chief, Joseph Goebbels. Right? You report a lie often enough, it turns into the truth. Me and you and a lot of the people in this room are part of the lying media, and that must be true because I've heard that term for a number of years now, and I hear it now just about every day. Accidentally inviting a journalist into a chat about a military strike in Yemen is not a big deal. It's not reckless. It's not even foolish. It's not even a mistake. We need reporters. You might be the only reporter at a small town weekly, but if you don't go to the county supervisor's meeting, stuff happens. And if you don't rise through the ranks of the local newsroom to be the news director, then who's going to wrestle with the station owner who wants to kill a big, important story? This is important stuff that you guys are learning here. This idea of witnessing and writing what you see, what you know for sure, I don't think it's a job so much as a calling. Years ago, I did a little sports reporting, and the first time I was in a press box at a big NFL game. As the team I was covering scored, I cheered a little bit, and I was taken aside, and I was told, there's no cheering in the press box. Well, that's essentially what we've been accused of. I've been thinking that over, and if we are guilty of that, then maybe we deserve some of the heat that has come our way. But standing up for democracy, for the Bill of Rights, for the rule of law, is not taking sides. It's upholding the very things that have made us who we are. We are in a rough patch, no doubt, and there are plenty of days I want to take my eyes off the movie I'm stuck in. Maybe as a retiree, I can take a day off once in a while, but not you. Not you reporters. Not you supporters of this school. Not you professors. For if you remember, in Groundhog Day, Bill Murray finally gets it right. Our republic has been on the edge of calamity before. Truth, though, as Ed Murrow believed in practice, was stronger than name-calling and accusation and innuendo. And while we have allowed others to define us, ours is still an honorable profession, but only if we insist to make it so. Thank you. Bruce has questions. I may have answers. You have no idea. I mean, you really don't have any idea. I get this call, and I'm like, you are out of your mind. There are so many other people. And I really did. I've always thought of it as on this kind of secret mission. We're just telling people stories, so you know that your neighbors are not your enemies, and it's all, we're all, can't we all get along, as Rodney King said on the side of a highway many years ago. Yeah, so there you go.
All right, so am I on? So, Harry, you have a choice.
I have a choice.
Yes, I'm giving you a choice. So we can...
Test.
Yep, there we go. All
Okay.
right. So Harry and Elizabeth had a conversation on their way into to lunch, and it was an interesting conversation, and Harry said, maybe we should talk about this after my speech. So you and I can do a Q&A, or you and Betsy can do a Q&A.
Give me your best question.
All right. Have a seat.
Betsy, hang on.
All right. My best question. Well, I have to work into my best question.
Okay.
Let's start with this, all right? So we have a lot of powerful people, politicians, celebrities, athletes.
Yeah.
They occupy a lot of the news. What do we lose when we fail to tell the stories of everyday people?
Everything. So we've done a number of sessions with students and people who are out in the workforce, and a young woman comes to me yesterday, and she's an investigative reporter, and she's working on stories about what's happening here and the pressure on the graduate school and fewer people being admitted and people losing their jobs, et cetera, et cetera. And she said, well, what I get from the university is boilerplate. And I said, well, you've got to let them have their say. But you know, and I know, that it's gobbledygook. And there's a tenured professor who's been here for 20 years who wants nothing more than to serve her students in the best way she possibly can. And you bump that up against the crap that the university is telling you. People, that will stick to the screen. That will stick to the page. That's just the truth. So I was just telling her, you can't be afraid of that, right? Because you know, they're giving you this line. It's the same line they gave you last week and the week before. And I said, listen, they have a real self-interest in kind of protecting what they can protect, right? They're not going to poke the bear, but you can poke the bear.
All right, good. So one of the things I learned at dinner last night is that you really can't take a break when you're talking to Harry, because if you do, you're going to miss something really cool, and he doesn't allow you that break. You have to lean in. It's exhausting, frankly. So, but that's okay. It's worth the exhaustion, but it's a tiring experience. But a good Harry Smith story includes a great interview, and I'm just curious about your interviewing technique. Are you a naturally empathetic person? Is this a skill you developed? Did your approach change over time? Are you always present when you're talking to Andrea?
That's a good question.
Yes, it is.
I'm taking the Fifth Amendment on that one, brother.
I get the same question from my wife, by the way. So
there's a couple things there. Some of it is just thinking about the stories I was telling about my parents. But I helped teach a writing class at NBC that we had for years and years and years, and there was a waiting list to get into this writing class. People who had worked there for years wanted to get into this writing class. And I would come with a sheet of bullet points, and one of the things that I talked about, especially about writing and about doing this job, is when I get ready to do the story on you, Bruce, there's no such thing as too much homework. I want to know as much as I humanly can gather before we sit down to chat. And then I write out my questions and I write out my bullet points. But you know what I'm never going to do is look down. I'm never going to look down, because we had this a couple of times. I had it with Sue Ann yesterday when we did a taping.
Yeah.
She was so listening to me. And as I know that you're paying attention to what I'm saying, I'm going to tell you more things. Some other things are going to spill out of me that I might have not told the prior reporter or whoever's coming next. And then what I would say in this class is, when you have this conversation with this person, with this character, you have a moral responsibility to tell their story. It's not your story, it's their story. And the other part of this then is, after this long conversation, you get a sentence, 2, maybe 3 sentences that you can put on the page or put on the screen. But that conversation, if you allow it to go in, internalize it, then when you get ready to write the story, it's going to come out of your fingers. It's just like magic, because you can't not know what you've learned.
Okay.
All right?
All right.
How
Okay.
about that one?
Yep, that's a good one.
I hope you guys are taking notes back there.
Yeah.
There you go. I got a hand up.
I should mention, by the way, that some of these questions are my own, and some of these are from Murrow College students as well. So
Okay.
I've combined them. So here's one from a Murrow College student that I really like. When you're covering humanitarian stories, so you talked about the woman in Louisiana as an example, how do you balance being a human being with being a reporter?
It's impossible. One of the things that I've come to know over the years, and this is too bad because of the lectern, sorry about that, guys. I'll just stand up. As I've gotten older, I've realized that there is a limit of human capacity for being able to take in. I've been in places where there's like dead bodies strewn on the ground, and the smell of rotting human flesh and despair. And I mean, I got to the point where if I had to go to one more mass shooting, I just said I can't go anymore. But you'd have to have some kind of level of self-awareness to be able to say, I'm just going to put my hand up and say no. Just no, I can't do it.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
How do you process then a particularly difficult or traumatic story? I mean, I have to be honest. I'm the dean of a school of communication, College of Communication. I find myself sometimes just shutting my laptop. There's some news I can't read any longer. Don't want to watch. How do you process?
This actually came up with some of the fellows earlier today, and about kind of self-care part.
Sure, yeah.
And I said, you need to continue to pay attention to the things that you just love so much. And so I love classical music. Friday night, I'm in New York. I walk over to Avery Fisher Hall. I take my seat for the New York Philharmonic concert. And I'm just kind of abuzz, because for the next 2 hours, I'm just in that. I'm in that. And it's transcendent, art. Like, it gives you goosebumps and stuff. And so I said to the young person, you need to make sure you make time in your life for those things that you really care about. The things that help you not be involved in your day-to-day and feeling the pressures of deadlines and everything else. Because that's a way to keep yourself sane.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Very good.
All
Very
right.
good. Okay.
Bruce.
Yep.
I still don't know why you called me. I mean,
do I have to explain it?
My wife and I have talked often about the imposter complex, and I think sometimes I went to a tiny little liberal arts college in the middle of nowhere, but it was an amazing experience. It was phenomenal. I took everything that wasn't nailed down. I mean, I took philosophy and theology and sociology. If there's had an ology in it, I took it. I took feminist authors. Oh my God, it just was glorious. It was phenomenal. And people go to a place like this, an esteemed school.
Sure.
And say, okay, here's my career plan. I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do that. I mean, I went in the back door, right? And then went that way and that way. I worked at a pop station in 1975, and 3 times I was fired and rehired the same day. They literally could not find somebody to replace me. I'd sit on the stoop of the radio station with my box with the tapes in it and the candy that I stole from the candy giveaway thing, and because they didn't pay very much money. And I'm sitting outside waiting for a ride because I didn't have a car to get home. And the general manager come tap me on the shoulder. Be back here tomorrow morning at 10. We couldn't find anybody to replace you. So there were years out of college, I described my career as kind of a dumpster fire, quite frankly. So yeah, there's, that whole straight line. I'm going to go there and I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. It often doesn't work like that.
All right. Okay, I'm going to ask a question that I wasn't going to ask you, but I just have to. So sometimes I feel like when I'm talking to you, I'm talking to Mr. Rogers of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood fame. And I've been in a lot of newsrooms, and they tend to be places of cynicism, to be perfectly frank about it. It's cynicism, old coffee, cigarette butts. In the old days, it would be a bottle of whiskey in a drawer someplace. And you seem to be quite unaffected by a lot of the stories you've covered, and you have this tremendous sense of appreciation and gratitude. And I have to tell you, in that sense, I share that. This is a job that I love and many days hate also, but love. I wouldn't do it for free, but I love it. But I wonder about you. Well, this sense of I've read enough and seen enough of your interviews and things like that. How did you escape unscathed from a 40-plus year career in journalism? What's the secret there?
So I have an old goldfish bowl at home, and it's filled with drugs. And there are all kinds of drugs.
We don't want to hear this story.
All kinds of drugs in there. And every day I close my eyes and I pick out a couple and I pop them in. I'll say, how'd that going today? So that may or may not be true.
All
Let me try to give you a serious answer.
Yep, there we go.
So I was interviewing Mr. Rogers once,
Not
and he had
surprised.
a tie on, and it was a tartan. And I said, well, what tartan is that? What pattern is that? And he says, well, it's a clergy. It's a clergy. He was an ordained minister.
Right.
Right? When I was graduating from college, I was really thinking I might go to divinity school, or go to graduate school and study communications as a social science. I really loved words. I tried to do this project somewhere between my junior and senior year in college. I taught English in Taiwan for the summer, and I had this whole idea of taking words like fire and try to use like bipolar adjectives to describe the word, and how the Chinese would come up with a numerical equivalent of a word in Chinese versus English. I had a nervous breakdown that summer, so I didn't finish the project. That's actually pretty physical and normal, just really fall apart. But I loved all that stuff. I loved that. I love learning things, right? So I said it's not a job, it's a calling. And that stuff I said about being churched so much and my takeaways, I just believe all that stuff. I mean, I'm not in a kind of zealotry, but in a sense that we all need to connect each other, right?
Okay.
Back to Tom Joad in Grapes of Wrath, right at the end, where he talks about, I copied it down someplace. He says, you know, if there's a cop beating up a guy, I'll be there. That whole thing, right? I just kind of believe that. There's not a straight line to my belief system, believe me. But that's what I believe. So if I'm a little Fred Rogers, so be it.
Awesome. All right. I appreciate that.
And I can't answer a question in less than about 5 minutes. I apologize.
It's okay. I wasn't worried about having a lot of questions for this interview, actually. So,
Okay.
All right. So one of the job of old people is to worry about young people.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just sort of part of you adopt that at some point. I don't know if you're a parent or whatever it is, you just start to worry a little bit. So I'm curious about the new media environment. Well, that's an old media environment now, I suppose. Being 62, everything is new to me still. That young people find themselves in. You know, there's this idea of digital natives, social media. We have so much available to us, but so much of what we hear is consonant with our own thinking. We talk about, you know, information bubbles or echo chambers, right? Are you worried about the media environment that young people are in?
I'm
today?
plenty worried about it, because friends of ours, people we're related to, are going down rabbit holes, and they're not aware that there's a technology that's forcing them back down into the rabbit holes. So they come out believing there are, you know, movie stars raping children in the basement of a Pizza Hut in Washington, D.C. I mean, it's crazy.
Right.
That part is crazy.
Yes. Yeah.
The other part of that, now that I've spent a half a semester teaching a course at my college, I just, you know, you need to turn those machines off, right? The research has been done. It's just dopamine. The scrolling, that you're 1:30 in the morning, you're just scrolling away and scrolling away. Oh, did you see this one about the blah, blah, blah? I mean, there's no there there. There's zero there, right? I mean, read a book. Read a book. Amazing things happen when you read books.
All right. Fair enough. Let me ask you a question. Okay, in an era of sensationalized news and you know, these kind of quick hit dopamine type stories, how do we get people to respect honest reporting?
I think it's just nose to the grindstone. I really do believe that. I just think about where we are right now, and so many people who were supportive and then are continue to be supporting an administration that just is kind of flooding the zone every day, and what are we going after next, and a lot of disruption, lots and lots and lots of disruption. Well, a lot of those folks are on Social Security, they're on Medicare, they're on Medicaid, and at some point maybe that, you know, comes home to roost a little bit.
Sure, sure.
And they're going to come back and they'll say, well, those other people, they think it's great, but I don't think it's great.
Mm.
So maybe, like the New Testament says, the truth will set you free.
Uh-huh.
Maybe that's all. I think we got to keep grinding. We got to keep grinding. The other thing, though, is because the world is so spread out, maybe it's a little bit like the early days of America, because every tiny town had multiple newspapers, right?
Right.
And cream rose to the top,
Yeah.
right? Thomas Paine wrote some stuff, and people ended up passing it around all over the country, right? So it may be naive, maybe Pollyanna. I think that's sort of like Fred Rogers.
Yeah, fair
but
enough.
I'm not giving up on that.
Okay.
Not giving up on it.
Okay, I'm going to hold you to it then.
All right.
All right.
Should we do Betsy?
Sure.
Let's do Betsy.
All right.
How about your new
all right.
president, Betsy Cantwell? We won't take forever.
Good.
How are you today?
I'm great.
Yeah? I mean,
am.
honestly,
Honestly.
It has to feel like a little bit like an out-of-body experience.
A little.
Yeah. Right?
It's a lot of vectors of information that one feels.
You sound like a scientist.
Yeah, I am. I'm an engineer, for those of you that don't know me. So I'd like to put things in boxes and
Yeah.
draw.
How else to keep order?
Rely on really good people.
Yeah. But I mean in terms of,
Yeah.
your own making sense of everything.
So I don't have order, which is why I ask for grace.
Yeah. When we chatted
Yeah.
earlier, you said you were excited about being here.
Yeah.
This place in particular.
Yes.
Why?
And I'll repeat what I said, and maybe with a little nuance, but because there are very few places where you can do the right thing, an incredibly complicated job with service to all kinds of people, and lots of them, in the same place. So I call that sort of serving my moral core in the same place where there is reception and capacity and capability to be heard. And that is not true for every academic institution in the US right now. And I think that that's part of why we see such horrifying things happening to university presidents and therefore their institutions in places like Columbia.
Yeah. Do you know why you came here?
Yes.
Yeah.
I said that like that because I'm not sure
what I mean.
No, I'm actually
And
not
that's
sure I'm
good.
going to say it in a public forum. One to one.
I paid for this microphone.
But what do you mean?
No, so I just think it's a big darn deal. And there come moments in our adult lives where we're like, this may be the last really big decision like this I'm going to make.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I will just say that there is, in addition to complexity in these jobs, there is nothing else on the planet, and certainly nothing else in this country, that gives you the capacity to serve so many people and so much. So it isn't just people sitting in this room, it's not my many students who are here today, but it's all who have come before and will come after, in an institution which is committed to the development of a platform, if you will, that every one of those people before, now, and after has the capacity to understand the truth.
Amen.
There's very, very little out there.
So just from a show business perspective, that's where you drop the mic and walk off the stage. How about a hand for the new president of Washington State University? Thank you so much.
Am I on? Okay, we'll use this one. Hey, I'll tell you the truth. It's hard to recover after that interview and go back to reading the teleprompter. So just hang with me and we'll get there, okay? So Harry, thank you so much for being here this afternoon. And I have to also thank your lovely wife, Andrea Joyce. Andrea Joyce is going to be delivering our free lecture tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock here in the Cub. And she is a Hall of Fame sportscaster. She just flew in from Boston where she was covering ice skating. She's still a working sportscaster and she is awesome. So please plan to come. Sherry, Harry, I appreciate you so much sharing your insights and hearing your stories. It's been great. We really do appreciate you, appreciate your work, great advice you're giving to our students. It's a meaningful part of their education here at Washington State University, so thank you very much. You bet, you bet. For everyone else, instead of me blathering off the teleprompter, I'm simply going to say, in 15 minutes, we start new panels here along the back of the Cub. Make sure you get to one because this is the most amazing learning opportunity communication students have in our country, and it happens right here at Washington State University. And yes, I'm biased, okay? So I just want you to know that that's going to be happening tonight. Sorry, don't just forget about the teleprompter. Don't even worry about it, okay? Tonight at 4:30, we're going to have our celebration of excellence in our Hall of Achievement induction ceremony here, right here in the Cub in this very room. The president will be back. We're inducting some outstanding people today, really, really terrific people. And it's going to happen. It's going to be a lot of fun. So please come back and plan to participate. It's going to be a little group participation. We have a great time. And then after that, we're going to have our student showcase, an interactive, I don't know, what do we call that thing, Stacy? Interactive research, blah, 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 in the back of the room. And it's really cool. There's a virtual reality display back there. So if our own reality is too much for you, you can just go do virtual reality instead. And with that, I say thank you, everyone, for coming. Harry and Andrea, thank you so much for being here. Everyone, have a great afternoon, or good night and good luck. And go Cougs!